The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a story of two peoples with deep historical and religious ties to the same land, locked in a cycle of violence and failed peace efforts. For Israelis, it's about securing a safe homeland after centuries of persecution. For Palestinians, it's a fight for self-determination and the right to return to their ancestral home. These competing national aspirations have created a zero-sum struggle, where compromise feels impossible. The conflict's consequences ripple far beyond the region, fueling global tensions and humanitarian crises. To understand why peace remains elusive, we must unravel the history, claims, and key events that have shaped this enduring war. The land at the heart of today's conflict is sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. For thousands of years it has been a spiritual center, a place where faiths were born and civilizations flourished. Its ancient stones have witnessed prayers, pilgrimages, and profound moments that shaped the beliefs of billions. This region has long been a crossroads of empires: Egyptians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, and Ottomans all left their mark. Each wave of conquest brought new rulers, cultures, and religions, layering the land with a complex history that still echoes today. Jewish history is deeply rooted here. Ancient kingdoms rose and fell, and Jerusalem became the spiritual heart of Judaism. But after the Roman conquest nearly 2,000 years ago, most Jews were forced into exile, scattering across the world. Yet, a small Jewish presence remained, keeping alive traditions and memories of the homeland. Over centuries, the region's identity evolved. Palestinian culture and identity are tied to centuries of Arab and Islamic rule, especially after the Muslim conquest in the 7th century. Arab families, Islamic architecture, and vibrant markets became central to daily life, shaping the region's unique character and demographics. In the late 1800s, new forces emerged. The rise of Zionism called for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, while Palestinian nationalism grew in response, both movements fueled by hopes, fears, and memories of loss. Each community began to see the land as central to its future, setting the stage for a struggle over identity and territory. Jewish immigration increased under Ottoman and then British rule, especially as persecution in Europe intensified. New arrivals built communities and revived Hebrew, while local Arabs grew anxious about losing their land and way of life. Tensions escalated, with protests and violence becoming more frequent. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan to divide the land into separate Jewish and Arab states. The Jewish leadership accepted the plan, seeing it as a path to statehood, but Arab leaders rejected it, unwilling to divide what they saw as their homeland. In 1948, Israel declared independence. War broke out with neighboring Arab states, and over 700,000 Palestinians were forced to flee or were expelled from their homes, a tragedy known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. Entire villages were destroyed, and families were scattered across the region. 2 decades later, in 1967, another war erupted. Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, placing millions of Palestinians under military occupation. The map of the region changed overnight, deepening the sense of loss and injustice for many Palestinians. In 1993, the Oslo Accords brought hope for peace. Leaders shook hands, and the world watched as Israelis and Palestinians agreed to work toward a two-state solution. For a moment, it seemed possible that decades of conflict might give way to coexistence. But the peace process soon faltered. Waves of violence, failed negotiations, and deep mistrust hardened divisions. Each side suffered losses, and the dream of peace faded as new generations grew up amid conflict. Today, the modern conflict is rooted in these unresolved historical traumas. The land remains divided, its people separated by walls, memories, and pain, still searching for a way forward. Israelis see their claim as rooted in ancient history, religious promise, and the need for a secure refuge after the Holocaust. The creation of Israel is viewed as a return to their ancestral homeland and a safeguard against future persecution. Palestinians see themselves as indigenous, dispossessed by a foreign project that shattered their society. The Nakba is a living trauma, reflected in ongoing occupation and the plight of refugees. Each side's narrative challenges the other's legitimacy, fueling mistrust and fear. Israelis emphasize security and survival. Palestinians frame their struggle as a fight for rights and liberation. These irreconcilable stories make compromise extraordinarily difficult. Israel's right-wing government prioritizes security and settlement expansion over a two-state solution. The Palestinian Authority, weakened by corruption and limited power, governs parts of the West Bank but lacks legitimacy. Hamas, ruling Gaza since 2007, rejects Israel's existence and relies on armed resistance, deepening Palestinian division. This internal split undermines any unified Palestinian strategy and gives hardliners on both sides the upper hand. The fractured leadership ensures that moderate voices are drowned out, stalling any real progress toward peace. On October 7, 2023, Hamas launched a brutal attack on Israel, killing over 1,200 and taking hundreds hostage. Israel responded with overwhelming force, devastating Gaza and displacing most of its population. The death toll in Gaza has surpassed 60,000, with catastrophic humanitarian consequences. The war spilled over regionally, nearly igniting a wider Middle East conflict. For Palestinians, it's seen as another Nakba, for Israelis, a fight for survival. Trauma and anger on both sides have hardened positions. A US-brokered ceasefire has paused the violence, but the core issues remain unresolved. The war's legacy is a region more divided and scarred than ever. The recent war has sent shockwaves across the globe, igniting widespread protests and sparking intense debate in capitals from Washington to Berlin. While Western governments initially voiced strong support for Israel, the situation on the ground quickly evolved, and so did international sentiment. As the conflict escalated and images of devastation in Gaza filled news broadcasts, public opinion began to shift, forcing leaders to reconsider their positions. The deepening humanitarian crisis in Gaza, marked by destroyed neighborhoods and desperate civilians, became impossible to ignore. Aid organizations sounded the alarm, and calls for an immediate ceasefire grew louder, echoing through the halls of power and on the streets worldwide. Massive protests erupted in major cities, with demonstrators demanding not only an end to the violence but also recognition of Palestinian statehood. In response to mounting diplomatic pressure, several Western nations took the historic step of officially recognizing a Palestinian state, signaling a significant shift in international alliances. Meanwhile, legal challenges at the International Court of Justice and heated debates at the United Nations have further isolated Israel on the world stage. These proceedings have intensified scrutiny of Israeli actions and increased calls for accountability. In the United States, public opinion has undergone a notable transformation. Once a steadfast supporter of Israel, the American public is now increasingly critical of continued military aid, with many questioning the morality and strategic wisdom of such support. Across the country, grassroots movements and humanitarian organizations have mobilized, organizing donation drives and demanding greater assistance for Palestinian civilians caught in the crossfire. The U.S. government now faces a delicate balancing act, maintaining its long-standing alliance with Israel while responding to growing domestic and international calls for a sustainable, just solution to the conflict. Around the world, frustration is mounting among diplomats and leaders who see the status quo as untenable. The patience of the international community is wearing thin, and the demand for meaningful change is louder than ever. The conflict's far-reaching impact is reshaping diplomatic relationships, forcing countries to reconsider old alliances and forge new ones in pursuit of peace and stability. As the world watches closely, international response has become a decisive factor, one that could ultimately determine the future of the Israel-Palestine conflict and the prospects for lasting peace in the region. For decades, peace talks between Israelis and Palestinians have broken down time and again, largely because of a handful of deeply rooted, complex issues. These core disputes, borders, settlements, Jerusalem, refugees, and security, have proven to be persistent obstacles, each one layered with history, emotion, and national identity. Despite numerous international efforts and countless hours at the negotiating table, these fundamental disagreements have kept both sides from reaching a lasting agreement. Israeli settlements in the West Bank continue to expand, fragmenting Palestinian territory and making the prospect of a contiguous, viable Palestinian state increasingly difficult. For Palestinians, these settlements are seen as illegal land grabs, while many Israelis view them as a rightful return to ancestral lands. The international community remains divided, with some countries condemning the settlements and others offering tacit support. Jerusalem stands at the heart of the conflict, its ancient streets and sacred sites claimed by both peoples as their capital. For Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike, the city holds profound religious significance. Any proposal to divide or share Jerusalem sparks intense emotions and political resistance, making compromise extraordinarily difficult. The fate of millions of Palestinian refugees, many living in camps across the Middle East, remains unresolved. The right of return is a deeply personal and symbolic demand for Palestinians, representing justice and recognition of their suffering. For Israel, however, allowing a mass return is seen as a threat to the Jewish character of the state, fueling fears of demographic change. Security concerns dominate Israeli policy, especially in the wake of violence and attacks. Many Israelis feel that any peace deal must guarantee their safety, with strict controls and robust security measures. The memory of past conflicts and ongoing threats shape a national psyche that prioritizes security above all else. Palestinians, on the other hand, argue that true security can only come with the end of occupation and the achievement of genuine sovereignty. For them, freedom of movement, control over their own borders, and the right to self-determination are non-negotiable. Without these, any peace agreement feels incomplete and unjust. Each side's core demands are seen as existential by the other, fueling mutual distrust and fear. For Israelis, security and recognition are paramount. For Palestinians, justice and statehood are essential. These opposing narratives make compromise elusive. The physical and psychological gap between what each side needs for peace remains vast, reflected in the walls and barriers that crisscross the land. Generations have grown up knowing only conflict and division, making it even harder to imagine a different future. These unresolved issues, deeply rooted in history, identity, and fear, keep the conflict locked in a seemingly unbreakable stalemate. Until both sides find the courage and creativity to address these core challenges, the path to peace will remain blocked. Amid devastation, a fragile US-brokered peace plan has brought a ceasefire and the release of hostages and prisoners. Humanitarian aid is flowing into Gaza, averting total collapse but falling short of true reconstruction. The decapitation of Hamas's leadership has shifted dynamics, with new leaders possibly more open to long-term ceasefires. Yet Israel's government remains opposed to Palestinian statehood, and public opinion is hardened. The current plan focuses on economic incentives and security, not a full political settlement. Negotiations continue, but the path to a real solution is fraught with obstacles. This fragile hope could vanish with the next crisis. The conflict endures because it's a clash of identities, histories, and traumas, not just a territorial dispute. Core issues, borders, settlements, Jerusalem, refugees, are existential for both sides. Political divisions and cycles of violence reinforce mistrust and extremism. Real peace would require courageous leadership, international commitment, and painful compromise. Both sides must recognize each other's rights and humanity. The alternative to endless war is the hard work of building two states, side by side, side in peace. After a century of bloodshed, the choice is between more conflict or a future built on coexistence.